What's up, Madridistas? This is Kiyan Sobhani. Happy Friday. Got a little treat for you guys heading into the weekend. Here's a compilation of clips from Wednesday's live Zoom call, which went up over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. We did 1.5 hours of Q&A live on the call. It was great speaking with you all. Thanks for joining. And here are a few segments of it, not the whole thing, just a few segments. And if you're interested in joining our weekly Zoom call, patreon.com/Managing Madrid. All right, let's get to it. So the question is essentially, should the team go in a different direction than having Cruz and move to a more modernized number 8, basically, right?
Yeah. Something on the likes of City and Barcelona, maybe.
It
More
depends on
dynamic midfielders.
it depends on how you want to play. If you want to Cruz, if you want to, we talk about Cruz would be good to be press resistant and stuff like that, and he was against Barcelona. Despite not being good defensively in that situation. I think the inverse of that is more true. If you want to play a high line and you want to break down a low block, I think Cruz is actually really good for that because he is a really good presser and he can control games from that position. Whereas I never liked the idea of putting Cruz in a scheme where he has to chase shadows defensively. There's no point of him being on the field. Because I think, like, while he's press resistant in that situation to escape the press, I think it kind of undervalues and underrates the ability of our backup midfielders to be press resistant too. It's not like there's a massive drop off if you put Camavinga as an 8 or Ceballos as an 8 or Fede Valverde as an 8 in terms of press resistancy. It's certainly not enough to justify the trade-off of the defensive drop-off that Cruz would provide in that position. On the flip side, if you play a game that is high pressing and controlling in the final third, Cruz is actually better for that role, in my opinion. The challenge is not that he can or can't do that. He can do that, but the challenge is the sustainability and how long he'll last in a scheme like that. And I think that's kind of what happened in the first leg against Barcelona was that we controlled it. Cruz and Modric were the linchpins of that, and they did well. But by the second half, they were both exhausted. And you can kind of see when Barcelona scored, or I think was it Kessié who scored the disallowed goal or something like that in the second half?
Yeah.
We were just running on fumes. The midfield was running on fumes at that point. So you can't sustain it and that's the challenge. It's not that they can't do, but they can't sustain it. So if you're going to do that, you have to make the subs early. But look, like this idea of like the more dynamic, more modern midfielder that plays the box to box and kind of can do everything. I think that's where there's an argument to be made where again, I've been saying this for a long time. I don't think you can put Cruz and Modric together. And I think where there's confusion is that is by some evident, and by others, it's seen as slander to one of those two. And I just want to say it's not slander to either of those two great players who are still playing at a very, very high level. And I think there's a real case that you want at least one of them on the field for experience, organization, veteran presence. But from the dynamic of being able to dominate your opponents over the stretch of the 90 minutes, I think you have to break those two apart. And maybe one of them comes in with the bench mob just to split it up. Because my argument has been long that I don't think Ancelotti is putting his best players on the field together at the same time for long enough stretches. Whereas, like, when you see that domination, quote unquote domination, we had at the end of the last Clasico in the last like 15 minutes or so, I think you have to look at that and say, how can we stretch that out for 90 minutes and not just have it for 15 minutes? The margin of error is not long enough to, is not big enough to have it only work for a period of time. Like you can't go like last year. What happened in the Champions League was that period came in when the bench mob came in. By the grace of God, we clicked enough in those 15-20 minutes in the Champions League when the subs came in, and it worked. But the margin of error is not going to be enough every time for us to repeat what we did last season. So my argument is you have to have these players on the field from the beginning. And if you're going to save one or two of these players for the bench, you have to make sure that you juggle it in a way where the bench and the starters can all complement each other. So that it's not just the bench coming in and saving the season before it's too late. You can't rely on the bench to do that every time. So so I think that's where the case that Modric and Kroos need to be broken up a little bit. And Matt and I have been saying this for a long time, and I think the data backs this up. You need Rodrygo in from the start too, because I don't think you can. I'm writing about this now, but you have to give yourselves a better chance and increase the margin of error, I think. And
if I may add, right, I've been listening to obviously the mailbags between you and Lucas. I don't think Chouameni is as bad as he's made out to be. I do think that he can be a solid defensive mid. He's obviously more press resistant than Casemiro has been over the years, and this just reduces maybe to a little bit the dependence on Kroos to play that big a role in our build-up, right? And that just allows you to play a different kind of number 8 who can make those runs in the half space and play a more sort of fast game in that final third, offensively off the ball, combined with Vinicius, and that just gives us more options. I think.
I think you need that at least on one side. I think because Kroos doesn't really do that. I mean, he does sometimes, but it's not really his game.
It's very rare.
so long as you have, because Modric and Fede can do that, and so long as you have it on one side, on the left side, if you have Rodrigo and Benzema on the field together, there's a less of a need to have Kroos do that together on the left side because it becomes convoluted. You need someone to hang deeper and play those vertical passes. Because Rodrigo, if he plays, he's naturally getting into the left half space and overloading the left side. As long as you have that happening on the right side too, I don't think it's that urgent to have it on the left side because Rodrigo and Benzema will naturally do that. So I think it's as long as you have it on one side, I don't think it's necessarily that important to have it on both because, again, it's already happening, if that makes sense. All right. We got Brandon Stevens coming up. Brandon, you there?
Yeah. Hey, I definitely want to be sensitive in following that up because, like, the things that Mahan describes about Iran, like, that's not something that we in the West have to deal with in terms of media censorship. And like you said, that barely scratches the surface. So I understand that, like, I think I'm going to ask this question with a bit more caution because I understand that, like, in some parts of the world, like Real Madrid and this podcast, like, that's like the pinnacle of like what people have. And so I'm coming from like a very privileged position as someone that lives in the United States in New York and roots for a whole bunch of teams. And, you know, sports is just entertainment. It's not like it is an escape, but it's not like the only escape that I have. So I think it's important for me to contextualize that and say, okay, like, what the question I'm about to ask, it will never rise to the same emotional level for me because I love sports. I love rooting for Real Madrid, but like, it's not life and death. It's not the thing that takes my mind off of a dictatorship. It's just, you know, it's been a long week. Can't wait to tune into the game. But like, I'm in a very privileged position where that is not, you know, it's not my be all end all. So that's kind of how I want to contextualize that.
Okay.
With that said, I've been a fan since 2013 and, that's when I studied abroad. If anyone, you know, has heard my story before, I don't need to go into it all. And I have friends that are fans of a lot of different clubs, and including Barcelona. But I have Arsenal fan friends, Tottenham fan friends, like people who like really, really suffer at the hands of their club. Like, you know, Tottenham fans haven't won a trophy. I don't know. Probably, I don't know that anyone has been a Tottenham fan long enough to win a trophy. I don't know that anyone. I mean, Arsenal fans. I have a lot of friends that are Arsenal fans. They're having a great year this year, but it's been rough for a long time. As a Real Madrid fan, I've seen us win the Champions League 5 times out of 9 years. So more than 50% of the Champions League campaigns that I've seen
not good enough. Needs to be 10 out of 10.
I get that, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's just that, like, it drives me crazy, that when we don't succeed against Barcelona. But I would still much rather be a Real Madrid fan than any other club, and it's not close, including Barcelona, who has it drives me crazy that they've kind of had the head-to-head advantage against us in the time that I've been a fan. When I lived in Spain, I went to 3 Clásicos and we lost by a total of 7-0. I went to 3 Clásicos and I haven't seen Madrid score a goal. So I hate Barcelona, and I hate that we can't match them head to head. But I would still much rather be a Madrid fan than any other club in the world. And so when, it seems like the world is collapsing because we lose a Clásico for a league campaign that we're pretty much out of anyway. To me, it kind of drives me crazy. Like, it's like, can't we appreciate what we have, because it's so much better than being a fan of any other club. But again, that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Maybe it's not as important to me as it is for people who don't have as much. And I think that's something that I need to take into consideration. But I don't know, where do you stand on, like, how it stacks up against being a fan of any other club to be a fan of Real Madrid?
So what you're saying is something that, if I were to maybe rephrase it, is that I think a lot of Real Madrid fans are spoiled because of the amount of success. The ratio of success we get is astronomically more than any other team. You could argue in sports. I don't know that much about baseball. I assume the Yankees. I don't. But even what's that?
I'm a Yankees fan too, and they haven't won a title since 2009.
Well,
so Real Madrid blows any American team out of the water in terms of consistency of success.
Maybe the Lakers have won a lot, but even they don't win as much as Real Madrid do. We just win so much more than anyone else. But I do feel like there is often a sense of entitlement with Real Madrid fans that it always has to be this, and that's why so I'll just tell you, when I was 13 up until maybe 25, if Real Madrid lost or living in the Champions League, I was a mess. I was just distraught, world collapsing. I didn't care about anything in life. Over the years, I've learned well, hold on a sec. This is a little bit insane that our happiness lies in the fate of 11 men in a different part of the world kicking around a ball. We have zero control over what happens. We can get angry, we can get happy. We have zero control over that. But how can something so out of our control affect our happiness? And I think that's when I realized, hold on a second, maybe I need to find other sources of happiness. Maybe I need to, just create other wins in my life, so that if one aspect of my life doesn't go well, then, again, this is a privileged position, as you said, to be in. But I completely understand why it would affect, because just like everyone else, I still get sad or happy based on how they do. But I've just to point out, as managing Madrid, and all of us here, we always felt that we need to be a little bit different. We don't want, and this is a patron call, so they can stay between us, but these aggregator accounts now that have popped up in the last couple years, are just insane, because it's just almost like these robots just tweeting 24 hours a day behind anonymous Twitter profiles with zero accountability of what they're spreading. And we've always like said, okay, like we can't have extreme takes. We can't really go overboard about something. We have to just kind of analyze what we see and just be different and focus on the tactics and focus on real reporting and real analysis. And for that reason, I think if anyone comes to us for an extreme take about like, because a lot of our criticism comes on, like someone will come in with a really favorite player or someone they really hate, and they just want to go through the podcast to hear criticism of the person they hate or praise for the person they love. And if there's anything that doesn't meet that criteria, like they just get so pissed off with us. And either way, we have to just come in and do our best to be completely objective. And obviously, we're not completely objective. We do have our biases and we do have our favorites. And I will always be biased towards like a Camavinga or a Raul or whoever. I will always have that bias, admittedly. But we have to also do our best to not go too extreme either way. And I'm probably just taking this out of context of what you're saying, Brandon. But I think the overarching point is that I do think sometimes when we get really angry about something within the club, it is important to remind ourselves that, you know, we've won so much. And I would trade a Clásico loss every year for a Champions League trophy, for example. I would do that every year. 10 times out of 10 I would. Especially because it makes Diego so pissed off that he just takes away from his Clásico trophy that every time Real Madrid wins the trophy. But yeah, it's a long-winded way of saying I think it's okay to just sometimes cool down a little bit and just see how it shakes out. Because if you remember after that 4-0, we were all just distraught. Like we couldn't believe what we were saying. We need change. We need a new coach. And then months later, we won the Champions League in the most memorable way possible. So I think I guess the overarching point is we don't need to get too low or too high, and we just kind of need to keep that baseline and then just fluctuate a little bit here and there, but not go too extreme either way is the way I see it, you know?
Totally. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that's just why I wanted to bring it up. Like, there's no need to act like the world's ending, you know, when we lose a Clásico, but then we go on to win the Champions League. Or even if we don't, it's like, all right, like, I'm still batting 55% in my entire fandom. And I know that's not everybody. People have been fans much longer than I have. But it's just like, I have gotten so much damn joy out of this club and heartbreak too. But it just makes me realize that if I'm heartbroken about a Clásico loss, imagine what my Tottenham fan friends go through or my Arsenal fan friends go through. Like,
expectations are a little bit lower, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
For sure. And I get it. But I agree. I think the overarching point is sometimes it bothers me the sense of entitlement of the fan base. And this wasn't a criticism of Managing Madrid. It's more just the people on Twitter that are like, we need to blow everything up. And, you know, like
social media is a cesspool, man. It's gotten so bad. I had to stop checking it, and I just only post basically now. But just one more point. Like, when was the last time you won the Champions League? Less than 1 year ago?
Yeah, about 10 months ago.
Do you want to know what Eduardo Alvarez went through? Like, who was a fan long before I was born? 32 years. 32 years. I mean, I don't think he's actually that old. But anyways, the point is, between the title in 66 and title in 97 or 98, 32 years. And then between La Novena and La Décima, 12 years. So it's been a lot. Okay, so I think, and I don't know how long some of these people have been fans, but I do think some of the lack of extremism from me, for example, is because I literally saw a double pivot of Lassana Diarra and Fernando Gago, and I saw Pablo Garcia, I saw Thomas Gravesen, I saw Carlos Diogo as our right back, I saw Ruben, the Castilla defender, crying on the field because he was so bad. He started crying on the field and he had to be taken off. I saw Francisco Pavon. I saw I just saw so much darkness in my life with this. It's like, this is nothing. Like, it's nothing. And I will also say, like, before Kroos and Modric came, our midfield was just so bad for so long. You know, like when Xabi Alonso came, we had like a respectable figure in there that could actually he had some brains and some talent. Before that, it was just a mishmash, and you have to go all the way back to, like, you know, we had Guti for a stretch. He was up and down. Then you have to go back to like the Seedorf, Laudrup days, and Zidane a little bit later. Like now we have Kroos and Modric, and then we had a bunch of great depth. When talking about signing all these great young midfielders, like, it's just, we're swimming in just caviar right now compared to what it was. And I think that's part of my desensitization, maybe lack of extremism for some of this stuff. But yeah.
Same here. I've been really lucky that during the time that I've been a fan, that I'm like, all right, I hate Barcelona and I freaking hate when they beat us, and I hate not winning the league title or the Copa del Rey. But it's like, at the end of the day, we've got it really, really good. And I want to just acknowledge the comment in the chat from Anthony. So true. The pressure keeps us great.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is definitely important, and it's important to have that. But like me, myself, and, you know, it sounds like you agree, like it's not the end of the world. And we've gotten so much joy out of it that, like, you know, we can, I'm not saying it's okay to lose to Barcelona, but, you know, it doesn't have to ruin my week, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Anthony's point makes sense. The pressure is always forced the club to take action. You know, and it actually does, for sure. The club listens to that kind of pressure. Like, I'm not saying that they listen to the Twitter accounts or anything like that sort, but they do listen to the fans and white handkerchiefs and the pressure. We know this factually, and Eduardo has spoken about this too, that these polls that run in Marca, like which player would you like to sign, are directly from the club. They want to know what the fan base is thinking. They listen to that pressure. And Ancelotti himself literally has talked about, you know, well, the fans did not like our performance despite the win, so we have to play more attractive football, and he kind of fluctuates with that. He's spoken about it publicly. So that pressure obviously affects, and also the pressure, the strength of the rival has forced us, you know, the Pep, all those signings, Cristiano, Kaká, Xabi Alonso, Benzema in one summer, in part were to do with, in response to Barcelona, right? So all that, like, just to ground it back, it's also important to be critical. But I guess it's the extreme takes we're talking about mostly.
Hey guys, it's I'm feeling the time is like, since Real Madrid played the Clasico was like a month ago or something. I don't know why the time is very slow now.
International break goes by slow, I
international
find.
break, it's very slow. But I heard Rodrigo like during the Brazilian, I think it was an interview or something, when he was asked about Carlo Ancelotti, he said he's not, because I saw it in French, so let me just not make a mistake by doing the traduction. He's not a tactical like maniac or something. He just have some general idea that he's trying to just bring it down for us the easiest way. So
I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something like he doesn't really complicate things tactically. It's very simple.
He thinks,
something like that.
Yeah. So and back in like recent history with Real Madrid, like even with Ancelotti in his first time when he was here, 2013-14, with Zidane, with Mourinho. I don't remember that our squad had as much of freedom as now. I don't know is that good or not, because the freedom that our current squad, which is a young talented squad, have, it leads to a lot of times to chaos. We just don't know what's happening. Like everyone just don't understand what we're doing. Just
Yep.
do whatever we think is right. So on the long run, because as a coach, or most of the coaches, yes, there are future things that you think of for the squad, for the team, but the most important thing for you and for your job is to win next game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing in your job. So on the long run, do you think that this kind of freedom gonna help these players in a 2 or 3, 4 years from now be a better players or be a better individual players, like as a team? Because I don't think the freedom that Vinicius is having now is just get the ball, try to dribble, pass dribble 2 or 3, you lose it, it's fine. We're gonna back, we're gonna give it to you back. Try again, try again, try again. I don't think with Zidane that happens. I don't think with Mourinho, he's finished now. Even with Mourinho, with Nagelsmann, with Tuchel, with whoever, he will not allow something like this to happen.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about that?
So I think the freedom thing is really interesting. The freedom thing is not unheard of. But I think it only works if you do it properly. And what I mean by that is like Pep had this thing too, where Pep would say, we have a plan to advance the ball into the final third. Once we get the ball in the final third, basically I'm hands off. Those players are great enough to figure out what to do creatively. Vicente Del Bosque, when we had Zidane, Figo, Ronaldo, and Raul, same idea. Those guys, they're freaking Zidane, Figo, Raul, and Ronaldo. Like, what are you going to tell them? They'll figure it out. But when the plan is Vinicius by himself, that you can't trust him with that. What is he going to do? If it was Vinicius, Figo, Raul, and Ronaldo, yeah, I think it makes sense. But if it's Vinicius versus 4 defenders, it's not going to work. Also, like, you see little weird things, like someone gets the ball in the wing, there's no one in the box, and we just cross it to nobody. Like, that's not a plan, like that can't be happening. Or you get like Alvaro come on the field. Alvaro's this striker who's really good in the air. We've been crossing all game. He comes in the field and we stop crossing. Like, there has to be direction in those situations. Like, okay, guys, don't cross if there's no one there, and cross if Alvaro's there. This happened all too often. I mean, this happened under Zidane too, to be fair. We would stop crossing when Jovic and Mariano got on the field, something like that, So it's there needs to be more direction in this sense. If you're going to have fluidity and freedom, then you have to have the pieces to do that. You can't just blindly do it. So it's a valid point.